Hi there, Steve Kaufman here. I haven't done a video for a while. I have a new computer. I think the quality here is going to be better. I want to talk today about what it means to be a linguist and about input-based language learning. I will put in the notes to this video a reference to two posts on my blog. One is one where I go into more detail about the definition of a linguist and how we can all become linguists. Another one is a reference to an article by Professor Bloom at the University of Chicago on the history of language learning and input-based language learning. I particularly recommend the article by Professor Bloom. Very, very interesting. I want to talk about linguists because I am regularly criticized here, if not here, then at my blog, which I call The Linguist on Language. And typically people say you can't call yourself a linguist. You shouldn't be offering advice about language learning because you're not a linguist. You don't study linguistics. You don't know all these linguistics terms. I will also post here a link to a YouTube video put out by a Christoph Clugston, where he also criticizes me for calling myself a linguist, and you might listen to that if you're interested. He also delves into the whole, Benny the Irish polyglot issue and so forth. So let me make it very clear. If you open any dictionary of the English language, I believe, and certainly if you open the Oxford English Dictionary, which I have done, you will see that the first definition of linguist is a person who speaks more than one language. I think a lot of English speakers have not even heard the word polyglot. To them, a linguist is someone who speaks many languages. I don't think that linguistics or linguists are necessarily involved in language teaching, although I guess there is a field called applied linguistics. But I don't think they have been very helpful in making it easier for people to learn languages, in other words, to become linguists, because they have a tendency to complicate things, introduce complicated terms, whether it be terms of grammar or terms like phonemes and morphemes and I don't know what other kind of themes. So I don't think you need to be a linguistics expert. You don't even need to be an expert in applied linguistics to offer advice on language learning. If you have learned a number of languages, I think you have useful and potentially valuable experience to share with other people. People can form their own opinions, and they may be stimulated by what you say or not stimulated or turned off by what you say. So that, to clarify, a linguist is someone who speaks more than one language. I believe that many, many more people in the world could be linguists because it's made too complicated. Now, in that regard, the article by Professor Bloom is very interesting because it's not just today that we feel that language teaching has been made too complicated. This was an opinion expressed by John Locke, the British philosopher in the 17th century. There's another, Mr. Hamilton, I can't remember his name, but you'll see the details in the article by Professor Bloom, who points out that, in the Middle Ages, people learned languages by reading. And they had interlinear translations and, abundant glossaries to help them through these texts. And by reading subjects of interest, they acquired the language. And that they acquired it more quickly that way than in subsequent centuries when the emphasis was more on grammar and instruction. So that it's an interesting... And also this article by Professor Bloom points out just how important vocabulary is. That while a small number of words may account for 70 or 80% of most contexts, in fact, the remaining 20% consists of a lot of words, including a lot of relatively rare words. So that to participate in an intelligent conversation beyond just, ordering beer, requires a lot of words. And of course, all of that is behind the way we have structured LINC. We have sort of a modern equivalent of these glossaries in the way our little LINC widget works, which we're constantly improving. Now you don't even have to go to the dictionary. The meaning slots in right away. with our flashcarding built in, and where we're expanding our notes section to each lesson, so that, because the objective, I believe, as a language learner is to get to real, authentic, meaningful text as soon as possible. Again, Christoph Clugston criticizes me for not realizing, he believes I don't realize, that Krashen was promoted this idea of comprehensible input. You know, I know that, but I think that we can help make input more comprehensible, and if you can combine comprehensible input with making it interesting, then that's going to be much more effective for the learner, because you can't start with comprehensible input. You know, at first the comprehensible portion isn't 95%, it's 0%, and you work your way up from that. And if you have the audio, and if you have the glossary or the kinds of functionality that we have at Link, you can work your way through these texts. And I remember doing it. Within 3 months of being in Russian, I was attacking Russian novels because that's what interested me. So, yes, again, Clugston refers to total physical response and other teaching methods, which are fine. There's nothing wrong with these. They're probably quite effective. But it requires a classroom for TPR, whereas all I'm saying is, and again, Benny, the Irish polyglot, is always in favor of charging off to the country and speaking to people and corralling people to talk to and stuff. And in certain circumstances that might work. It's not something that I would choose to do. But all I'm saying is there is this other tremendously easy approach, which is to focus on input and to build up your vocabulary so that you can understand what people are talking about, so that when you do have an opportunity to speak, you're going to do better. But the big advantage of the input-based approach is not only that it was effective, as you will see if you read this article by Professor Bloom, it was effective way back in the Middle Ages, but it's all under control. You don't rely on the goodwill or indulgence of some native speaker who has to talk to you while you try to babble. You can decide what you're going to listen to, and nowadays with MP3 players, with the internet, with all these wonderful things, it becomes easier and easier, much easier than it was in the Middle Ages, to access interesting content. Just a few other things with reference to the Clugston video. He sort of implies, and Benny does the same, that I'm only interested in reading and I'm not interested in speaking. But that's not true, and people shouldn't ascribe motives to people when they don't know. To me, input-based learning is the fastest way to get to effective communication. To Benny, listening to MP3 players and reading is inhuman or antisocial or something. Okay, he doesn't like to read. That's fine. I think reading is tremendously powerful in your own language and in learning other languages. We have a disagreement. But don't assume that I don't like to speak. And similarly, Clugston says, oh, Moses McCormick speaks all these languages, but he never has a chance to speak them. Benny lives in Europe, so he's actually learning languages that he can speak. Well, in fact, when we talk about the joy of being a linguist, listen to a few of Moses's videos. Tell me if he doesn't enjoy speaking those languages. Tell me if he doesn't enjoy meeting an Estonian or someone from, I don't know, Cambodia or Kenya. I don't know all the languages that he's learned. He enjoys doing that. And why is that not a good thing? How can you criticize someone for doing that? And I'm quite sure that Moses knows his 15th and 20th language better than Benny knows his Czech and Hungarian or his Thai, where he went amidst great fanfare and claimed that within 2 months he was going to learn that language. So to each his own. I mean, I'm not saying that Benny didn't pick up anything, but to criticize people who have a somewhat more systematic approach, I think is unjustified. And we are all going to follow the method that we enjoy the most, because ultimately that's the key, is to enjoy it. And so, to summarize here, a linguist is someone who speaks more than one language. There's a tremendous amount of enjoyment and joy associated with being a linguist, and consuming massive amounts of input, not only 95% comprehensible, is very effective, and it has been so historically, and hopefully now with internet and MP3 technology, it will be again. Thank you for listening.